It has become an accepted truth that the ending of Lost was bad. I strongly disagree with this assessment, and I'm here to tell you why.
I say we take off and nuke the entire site from orbit.
Welcome to the occupation. Hang your collar up inside. Hang your freedom higher.
It's the only way to be sure.
I assume you already know some things if you're watching this video. Most importantly, I assume that you've either seen the entire show or you just don't care about spoilers. If you haven't actually watched all of Lost, I encourage you to go do that and come to your own conclusions. This video will wait to either argue with or confirm your perspective after you're done. Anyway, I think Lost is an incredible television show. Pretty much all of it. When it first came on television, I wasn't much interested in anything on broadcast TV, so I wasn't watching it during its peak period of popularity. But right as the third season was coming to a close, I decided to give it a chance. And I fell in love. As season 5 was approaching, I rewatched the entire series, then did so again when the final season was about to air. Since then, I've watched the entire thing at least 4 times. I genuinely do love it. Which is not to say that it's not without its problems. But it really bothers me that its series finale is reflexively brought up in any discussion of bad TV show finales as if it were an unquestionable truth. The reality is, like much of Lost, it is multiple things at once. One part is poorly done, but the rest is great. As anyone who has seen the show knows, an essential part of what makes Lost Lost is the flashback, flash-forward, flash-sideways structure of almost every episode. For almost the entirety of the first 3 seasons, each episode focuses both on what's currently happening to the characters on the island, along with a flashback to the past, usually centered on a single character. We would see what the characters were doing in current time and explore some episode from before they came to the island that gave us greater insight into who that character is. Occasionally, the show would deviate a little from this formula, devoting a flashback to both Sun and Jin, for instance, but it was pretty consistent. The show being all about various mysteries, strange events, and unlikely coincidences, it stands to reason that the showrunners like to mess with viewers' heads and give them all manner of things to talk about and reasons to examine episodes in the minutest detail to discover new secrets. A huge example of this was the unannounced shift in the season 3 finale to a flash forward. Watching the episode for the first time, there's nothing overt to tell the viewer that this isn't the same flashback format almost every other episode has followed. It's jarring, to be sure. Jack is running around LA with a truly awful beard, driving a car we've never seen before, and acting in ways that just don't fit with anything we've ever seen him do before. But it isn't until the very end that we learn that we've been snookered and we're seeing something that happened after Flight 815 crashed on the island, which gave us the entire off-season to speculate how Jack and Kate got off the island, who the he is that she was referring to, and who else, if anyone, got off too. It was, not to put too fine a point on it, vintage Lost. Seasons 4 and 5 use one or the other format in most episodes, though there are a couple that don't use either and one that uses both at the same time. It usually isn't difficult to tell which a particular episode is, except for that one that uses both, since, naturally enough, they don't reveal what they're up to until close to the end. Even when you're binging the show, the shifts don't really register. They only threw us a little that first time. And then we get to season 6 and a new format is introduced, the flash sideways. We don't know what it is for a while, but it's clearly different. For starters, it looks like the show rebooted itself. We're seeing scenes we saw back as far as the pilot, but events unfold differently. We can see the moment when the plane crashed in the pilot, but this time, well, it doesn't crash. So it's pretty obvious from that point onward that this is some sort of alternate timeline. How much it diverges varies from one character to another. Hurley considers himself to be the luckiest person alive. Sawyer's a cop. Jack has a teenage son. Kate is in custody, but she escapes in the airport. Claire's still hugely pregnant. Jin and Sun aren't married, but are having an affair that's a lot less secret than they think it is. Charlie's a junkie and almost dies on the plane. Desmond is Charles Widmore's most trusted aide, but he doesn't know Penelope. Locke is wheelchair-bound and planning his wedding to Helen. Ben is a high school teacher and Alex is his favorite student, and so on and so on. So as the stakes are driven higher and higher on the island, for a while at least, things back in the real world are kind of calm. The new versions of these characters are doing whatever they would do as they are now, and there's still a decent amount of drama, but it's qualitatively different. The true nature of this alternate reality takes an appropriately long time to reveal itself. In the series finale, obviously enough, the island timeline, which is in fact the real world, and the alternate timeline, each resolve themselves, and the alternate timeline is revealed to be a sort of prelude to the afterlife. So let's discuss some of the things about Lost that make it, and its finale in particular, such a source of debate. First, there's its basic nature. A big part of the draw when it first showed up on ABC were all the strange, mysterious things about the island. People spent immense amount of time and effort discussing and conjecturing about what was really going on there. Lost was an instant success, but its live viewership peaked at the beginning of Season 2. Slowly but steadily after that, it dropped. Which makes sense. There's a great deal of narrative weight put on the hatch in the latter half of Season 1, and then, when we finally get to see inside it in Season 2, viewers did not get answers, they got more questions. As it became clear that this was how it was going to be for the foreseeable future, viewers started checking out. New viewers like me made up for it somewhat, and DVRs contributed as well. Seasons 5 and 6 were among the most recorded and played back shows in history. The series finale drew live numbers like the show hadn't seen since early in Season 2. The writer's strike during Season 4 didn't help in the short term either, since the season had to be cut short because of it. But the downtime gave the showrunners a chance to consider the show's future, and they made the wise decision to plot a course to bringing the show to an end in 2 more seasons. But a lot of people left even so. They wanted answers, and they weren't coming nearly as fast as new questions. And a lot of those questions never did get answers. This bothers some people, but I'm obviously not one of them. When a show has so many unanswered questions, inevitably there will be theories about the answers to those questions. I've lost track of how many times I've heard some variation on, "Yeah, I liked it, but I quit watching once I figured out they were all already dead." Which is a shame because that's simply not the case. But Season 6 does show most of the major characters in a sort of purgatory in the flash sideways parts. So a lot of people who weren't watching anymore got wind of that and had their preconceptions confirmed. The thing is, Lost isn't actually about the island. The island and its mysteries are the hook, but the show is actually about the characters. What I mean is that while every story is about the characters in some sense, some are focused on other aspects of storytelling more. Theme or plot or even style can be the primary focus of any given story. You generally can't have a story without characters, but characters aren't necessarily the primary reason for telling the story. With Lost, they are. The real point of the show was to throw these flawed but interesting characters into situations where they would have to deal with whatever happened. The contrast, and often is not similarities, between their lives before the island and their struggles on it were far more important than the island was. The island itself is often referred to by the creators as a character in itself, and considered that way it becomes a lot less important why any one particular thing there works the way it does. But American mass market entertainment tends to be more about plot than anything else, and audiences are rather conditioned to that focus. Lost has plot to spare, but it's in service of character, not the other way around. Contrast that with your run-of-the-mill procedurals about policemen or firemen or whatever, and you see the difference. So it's understandable that a significant segment of the viewing audience got fed up when the story just kept throwing more and more mysteries at them and not nearly as many answers. Which brings us to the finale. Lost finale had 2 big jobs to do. It had to bring both the story of the island and the character stories to satisfying conclusions. It did a rather poor job of the former, but a masterful job of the latter. The thing is, it was effectively impossible to wrap up the mysteries of the island in a way that would bring closure for the majority of hardcore fans. Some of that is the fault of the writers for going down the path they chose with the Heart of the Island plot, but mostly it comes down to the fact that whatever they put on screen was not going to live up to what people had imagined for themselves. Battlestar Galactica chose to tie up its more metaphysical elements by just hand-waving them away without even a nod towards explaining them. That didn't work either. Nevertheless, I sometimes wonder if Lost showrunners might not have been better off choosing something more along those lines than what they did, because Lost gave us an answer to the central mystery of the island that just made for more questions, and those questions do not provide satisfaction, they just make us mad. For starters, the stuff Desmond finds in the heart of the island is obviously man-made. We've seen plenty of other explanations for how such devices got made, the donkey wheel for instance, and they pretty much work. But the pool with the plug in the middle that, when removed, causes the island to start having earthquakes doesn't answer anything. It just makes the viewer ask how it got there in the first place if no one without Desmond's special immunity or to electromagnetism can even go down there. How did the island stay stable before the pool and the plug were created? Seriously, it's a bad choice. But they decided they had to show us something. I think they could have come up with something a lot better, but no matter what it was all but guaranteed to be a disappointment. The characters' resolutions, on the other hand, are immensely satisfying almost without exception. 1 or 2 at a time, each major character remembers their real life and understands why they are where they are and what they have to do next. Some of them are calm and winsome, some are profoundly impactful. But they all fit the character that they deal with, and they all work. Kate delivering Claire's baby in the flash sideways, just as she did on the island when the baby was born in reality, and Charlie encountering them just as all 3 fully come awake is one of the best moments I've ever seen on television. And every little bit of what led up to it was necessary to make it work. Jack's final awakening is the one that provides us with the exposition to ensure we get it, and as such is probably the weakest of the bunch. Still, Jack finds his friends and moves on to eternity even as he dies in the real world on the screen. Structurally, narratively, and emotionally, it all works seamlessly. So yes, the explanation of the mechanics on the island ended up being a letdown. I accept that was almost inevitable. The audience's expectations were, after all, absurdly high at that point. But the characters' endings were nearly perfect. That's not an easy thing to do, even with 2 years of advanced prep. So I get really annoyed when people just throw the whole show under the bus because the less important part of the series finale didn't blow them away. Sure, it could almost assuredly have been better, but since it's the characters that I really care about, I genuinely love the ending.